was telling somebody this morning that in this profession, your hard work is directly linked to the health of your purse. The harder you work, the more wealthier you are likely to become. It might not happen overnight, but hard work always pays. You are going to reap one day. So I know the general perception is you must be a distinction kind of a learner or a student, but that is not always the case. You can still average your 70 and still go up all the way up and work in those firms.
Knowing what you know now and where you are now, here's a student who's still doing their law degree. Maybe they're doing their first year, second year. Or let's say a learner who's still in matric or in high school who aspire to law. With what you know now and your journey, what can you say in terms of advice of how you move in this profession to somebody like that?
I think what I would have done if I were in their position, what I would have done different from what I did.
Okay, another episode, and this is the legal one. I feel like a legal citizen today. Matsheta. I remember someone telling me that there is a difference between an attorney and a lawyer. And for me, in my mind, they were always. I realized that actually I used the words interchangeably without realizing that actually what an attorney is, what a lawyer is, and stuff like that. And you are an attorney, a notary. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure people who are doing law will actually understand this. But you can explain this just now. And you are a conveyancer. I thought that was just a fancy name. I was also like, wow, that's a fancy name. That must be something. Yeah. So I'm joined by Clarence Matome Matsheta, the Black MC, as he calls himself. He's also running an MC event company. He hosts weddings. I was just telling you just now that for my wedding, I'm sorted. I have you.
Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon, Dr. Ben Mahudu, and those who are viewing from home, those who may be listening to this podcast. You are quite correct. All you need to do is to call us and we'll get you sorted. Yeah.
So, what is the difference between an attorney and a lawyer? Maybe we can start there for the people who are interested in law who are going to be watching this.
Okay. So, I think a lawyer is more of a, if you allow me, a street name, because any person who studied law or any person who's practicing law can be referred to as a lawyer, if you know what I mean. So now when we talk of an attorney, when you talk of an advocate, we are now using the correct terms. Those are the terms referred to in law on the streets of the profession. That's what we are accustomed to. My relatives call me a lawyer, and that is absolutely fine. And you'll find somebody who has studied law, just having a degree, they can still be called a lawyer because they've got the knowledge of the law. And you find those people who are working in the corporate government, not necessarily practicing law like myself, but merely applying law or working in the compliance department of corporate firms, they are still lawyers in their own right. So a lawyer is quite a generic term. Judges are lawyers. Lecturers who are teaching law are also lawyers. Just that when you narrow it down, it becomes quite definitive.
Oh, I see. I see. It's like
Yeah,
saying that someone is an engineer, but um, are they a chemical engineer? Are they a mining engineer and stuff like that, right?
100%.
So now tell me this. I know like people like Advocate Dalimpofu, Advocate Tembeka Ngokai Toby, and I see that some of them they even have the SC senior counsel, right, at the end
Correct.
of their name, and then attorneys as well. So if someone who's perhaps in matric or someone who is in the law field and says, "Can you explain this?" I don't know if I should call them disciplines or I
Yes.
don't know what you guys call them. Um, what can you say on those?
Yeah. Okay. I think the simplest way of explaining them is by telling you what each of them do, so that you get to have an idea of where they differ. So um, basically, an attorney works hand in hand with an advocate. Um, in practice, a client from the street who's seeking legal assistance would approach an attorney, and an attorney will assist that person to a certain extent. And when a matter has to go to court, then they would brief an advocate. An advocate is the one who would usually appear in court to argue the matters in front of the judges and the magistrates. Not to say that the attorneys are not allowed in law to appear in court. Most of them do on a daily basis. Just that they are advocates are more of specialists when coming to litigation, especially appearing in court and dealing with complex litigation matters. As you can imagine, running the administration part of the practice of law on its own takes a lot of time, and that is what an attorney would focus mostly on. But when it goes to court, it also requires a lot of attention, and that is where an advocate would ordinarily come in to assist the client. I mean, it wouldn't help uh, for you to put a lot of work as an attorney only to go and lose the argument at the end of the day, simply because you did not prepare thoroughly and because you didn't have time to do so. So you've got people who are specialists in that to run with the arguments in court and so forth. So that is where they mainly differ. And how do they get to be attorneys and how do they get to be advocates? So we all do your LLB, a 4-year degree, and after finishing our LLBs, we then take different paths. Your attorney would go and serve articles for a year or 2 years, whatever the circumstances are, and write board exams. It's about 4 of them. And then once they are done with all of that, they will then make an application to be admitted as attorneys of the High Court of South Africa. Then they would be enrolled as such and they can start practicing as attorneys. On the other hand, advocates would, after finishing their 4-year degree, do what we call pupillage. Pupillage is more of where they are trained to be advocates, and serving articles is basically where you are trained to become an attorney. So they will do pupillage in the bar, and they will also write bar exams. And upon finishing, I think it's a year, and successfully passing that bar exam, then they would be admitted as advocates of the High Courts of South Africa. So that is where the career path, these two career paths differ.
So when you say they do pupillage in a bar, you don't mean the bar which I think about, right?
It can never be. You are expected to be as sober as a judge when you're handling matters of this nature. So it is a law bar.
Yeah.
It's not the one that you have in mind.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
mean, obviously, those are the terms that you guys use. But I was just thinking here as a layman, imagine telling someone that I've done this pupillage in a bar. They can think that, oh, hey, okay, you went to the bar and did this thing. Yeah.
yeah. No, they shouldn't think that they need to drink a lot to become advocate.
We're gonna get into the articles and also the board exams because I was talking to someone who I think they were going through this articles thing and this board exams things. So for someone like you who has been in the profession, maybe they can give some guidance on how to approach the articles, around even the board exams and stuff like that with the knowledge that you know. But let's start with yourself. From
Yes,
Bochum, I think Kgoshi Malebogo, right?
quite correct.
Uh,
Yes,
and then how did law found wa bona sekgowa se a gana jwale. How did law find you, or how did you find law? How did you get to be into this very lawyers, like one thing I love about your profession is like you guys dress up, like really dress up, So how did you get into law?
uh, you know what? I think the profession has always been very fascinating to me. And obviously, coming from the rural homelands of the far north of Limpopo, one is only exposed to a limited number of careers to pursue. And so around us, there are nurses, around us, there are doctors, obviously, because there's healthcare facilities there. And they would be your policemen, and there would be now courts where you would see lawyers, you would see magistrates, and so forth. So I had to choose from that, and law became more appealing to me. And then I thought it is a career that one can pursue. I think as a young man, I think in my late primary education days, I was at most fascinated by the gown, the court robe that the lawyers would usually wear. That was more like a Superman robe or the Power Rangers robe. And then I thought, man, it would be so nice to wear that thing every day because I would then be a Superman. But as and when I grew older, I realized there's actually a lot to this, because there's a lot of speaking, there's a lot of tactical thinking and tactical, or if you like, technical approach to matters. So I started developing interest. I would go as a high school learner and sit in courts and listen to these lawyers arguing, and that was very fascinating for me. And ultimately, I chose the stream that would channel me towards pursuing a law career. And also, me being sort of, if I may say, public speaker, also encouraged me a lot, because coming from the rural homelands, one always think of law as something that, or as a career that requires one to speak a lot. So I thought, okay, because I can speak and speak a lot, maybe that is also a career I can pursue. But you know what? As you grow into the profession, you get to realize that there's much more to it. And um, I ended up not even speaking much in this career. I'm currently a conveyancer and a notary, as you said earlier, and I'm speaking a lot to paperwork than to judges and magistrates. But yeah, that is how I came to be an attorney.
So I remember with me as well because sometimes can be much of a speaker. So
Yes.
people were like, "No, you must do law because you know you talk too much." And then we sort of associated law with public speaking or speaking and stuff like that. And you're just saying right now that actually there is more into law than just speaking. What are some of the other skills that besides speaking, of course, or maybe speaking is just one of the component, but what are other things that you guys do behind the scenes, like that doesn't involve speaking?
Yo, it's a lot. It's a lot, Dr. Makudu. Um, it's like what I'm doing now. In conveyancing, we're dealing with property, so we are property law specialists, and we are talking mostly to agreements, to um, all processes in and around the loan agreements, or home loan agreements, if you like, deeds office kind of work, everything in and around property law. That's where we are engaged. And as you can imagine, more often than not, property law issues don't end up at court. And even if they do, what we would probably do is to uh, give those matters to an advocate who can then go and argue, because we are too busy dealing with the paperwork around this property law thing. So it's a lot. Some of the people are doing compliance in banks. Some of the people are doing compliance in government departments. They never get to even see the court. Some of them since left their universities and they never even set their foot in court. They are uh, in those corporate offices. Some of them did articles, and from there they decided this litigation thing is not for me. Let me go into corporate, and uh, they are enjoying themselves there. So it's quite broad. And actually, if I were to say, I think a good number of us are are not doing the speaking. You know, a very good number of us. Yeah.
You're into property law. Um, I also once had someone talking about commercial law. Um, and then, you know, there's always this debate amongst people about, not amongst people, but usually students about which one is more lucrative than the other, or etc. etc.
Yeah. Look, that is it would be a very difficult question, because I'll tell you, it is not about how lucrative it is, really. Or maybe let me put it differently and say, any of these career disciplines can be better than the other. It all depends on who you have as your client, or do you have clients at all, really. So it doesn't help you are a commercial law attorney, and then yes, you can write very good fees if you've got really good clients who can give you work that can generate you good fees. And if your conveyancing counterpart is not as lucky as you are in terms of having clients, then ultimately you are going to make much more money than they do. And same would apply to a conveyancer who is, for example, doing high value transfer transactions, who's doing high value bond registration kind of transactions. He would obviously make much more money than a commercial attorney. So it all depends with what you are doing when you sit down every morning on your chair.
I see. I see. So
Yes,
you did your law at UJ. You have a bachelor's degree in law from UJ.
correct.
Like I said, from Bochum. Bochum is a rural place, like also the where I'm from. And then you see the thing about, you know, being a lawyer or being a lecturer or being an engineer, people see the end product. Like Matome Matsheta is a notary, is a conveyancer, but they don't see the journey, right? Um,
Correct.
Studying, the challenges, and everything like that. How was your journey?
Dr. Makudu, it was not easy. Let me put it that way. Because, as you said, as a black person coming from the rural homelands of the Limpopo, uh, I didn't know much about this law. From my village, I don't know of any lawyer uh, who became a lawyer before me. I'm not sure if we have some now. It will really be good to have more. But what I'm trying to drive home is I did not have anyone to look up to from my family. I'm the first one from my parents to actually get a degree, and I think that now shows you that I actually had to dig down all by myself and make sure that I make this happen without having uh, a mentor, rather, any a, a person who is my immediate family member to look up to and stuff. So now that made it very difficult. Then moving into your Johannesburg, you are now mixing with a lot of people from all sorts of cultural and racial backgrounds, and you have to adapt quickly, and you have to also get to speak English, because where we come from, we don't speak English, we only write it, and sometimes not even that well. So you can imagine the adjustment. And now, over and above that, you have to get used to studying law, because you can imagine during high school days, there is no any law module, not even one. It's not like your accounting or your engineering, where you would have your physics or your maths, where they would give you the basic principles of the course that you may ultimately study in the university. So with us, it was for the very first time uh, seeing law books, hearing of law and how it actually operates. I remember the very first lecturer, uh, rather the very first lecture that I attended. I was with a friend of mine who's now a state prosecutor, Semi Murwani. We come from the same high school. We're sitting next to each other as confused little boys from Bochum. And we were listening to this lady called Almarie Fourie. She was teaching us introduction to law. And she kept on saying Bill of Rights. And because of the accent, in our minds, we had Bull, Bull of Rights. And we kept on looking at each other and like, man, do you hear what I'm hearing? This woman is talking of Bill of Rights. The little we have had is Bill of Rights. So what is it that she's actually talking about? And when we went later, we sat and then we paged through our books and we realized that, but there's no Bill of Rights here. It's only Bill of Rights. And now that shows you that we had to start from the back foot and get to understand first the accent, first the dynamics in and around an environment of that sort, and also the language, how to articulate yourself. You couldn't even raise your hand in class if you were not sure about what the lecture is saying, because you knew that you can't articulate yourself that well. And that was a big problem. But then years went by, and we acclimatized, and we worked very hard because we knew we are starting from the back foot. Managed to complete record time, pass everything without repeating any module. And I can tell you, it's not that I am any smarter or I claim to have the monopoly of wisdom and stuff like that. It is all because of hard work. I had to put everything aside and make sure that I work very, 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 very hard. And I realized that this is the only opportunity I have to break the intergenerational curse that has been tormenting my family for many, many generations, and break it and really get to show to others that it is possible for one to get a degree. And yes, and many others have followed suit. We now have doctors and from my mom, and many other professions, artisans, and so forth. So it had to start somewhere, and I had to hold that candle and make sure that it brightens uh, in front of everybody, and they're able to see the path. And I had to understand the task I have in hand. And yeah, finishing the degree as well, you don't have any connections. You don't know anyone to say, man, don't you have a job there? And you're all on your own throughout. And you just, you know what, trying to find your way as and when you go. And, by the grace of God, um, some people picked me by the hand and showed me around, got to serve articles, and ultimately pass board exams and get to be where I am today. But really, what I want to say is these things sometimes choose you. You don't get to choose what you really want to do after finishing your degree, because I needed to become a big Santon lawyer, do your commercial law and stuff like that. And I didn't get that opportunity. Then I had to go and grab what I'm able to reach on the streets of the profession. And I had to start all the way from the bottom. I started doing criminal law. You can imagine, from commercial law, a fluent commercial lawyer that I aspired to be, and to a criminal lawyer working for a government entity, Legal Aid South Africa. It was two different things, but I can tell you that is the path that chose me. And after that, I had to somehow find my way out, because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do criminal law and stuff like that. So yeah, that is in a nutshell the journey that I've traveled. Worked hard even post my degree, and today I'm with one of the biggest firms in the continent, because I had to labor quite hard and prove myself. Yeah.
Yeah. What a story, man. And I think a lot of us can relate to that story. So, knowing what you know now and where you are now, here's a student who's still doing their law degree. Maybe they're doing their first year, second year, or let's say a learner who's still in matric or in high school who aspire to law. With what you know now and your journey, what can you say in terms of advice of how you move in this profession to somebody like that?
I think what I would have done if I were in their position, what I would have done different from what I did, is to make sure that I equip myself with skills before I even finish my my degree, because during my time I was so focused on ensuring that I pass all the modules and I pass well, and I forgot that it would also be very helpful, or rather, I didn't actually even know that it would be very helpful for me to go and grab some skills through vacation work and volunteering in some law firms before I can even get my qualification. Because this is what happens the moment you have your qualification, especially in a congested profession like ours. I think we have got many more law students than we have vacancies for law students, or rather law graduates. So one needs to be very competitive, and there is only a few avenues within which one can become competitive. One is to pass very well, because then you will attract everybody, and it's not always easy in law to pass very, very, very well, and that could be due to many other uh, reasons. Secondly, and I think this one is within everybody's court, uh, is to make sure that you go and do your vacation work. So now here's the tricky part. Vacation work, you need to apply for you to do vacation work, and it's usually these big firms which are giving vacation work, and they're going to take those who are passing very well. So most of the law students just apply and take it that they're going to be accepted, and if they are not accepted, then they sit back, they don't do anything any further. So I would advise them to actually go and approach even the smaller firms to say, we understand that you may not have the budget to take me as a work student and ultimately give me that stipend, but I want to volunteer. It's June holidays, it's Easter holidays, it's spring holidays, it's December holidays. Go into those law firms, knock. I can tell you there is a lot of work, and they would need some pair of hands to assist, especially educated pair of hands like those of a law student. So go there and say, I'm a hungry law student, hungry for skills, please teach me. Look, they might ask you to make a coffee for the partner or a director in that firm. Do it. Because for as long as you are in that environment, there's a lot that you are learning. They won't ask you to do coffee every day because they know they're not stupid. They know that you are much more capable of doing more than just a coffee. So keep on knocking. They would give you some of the paperwork to run with, and that's where you accumulate your skills. By the time you graduate, you get to a job where there is 50 other candidates who applied for that candidate attorney position. You are going to emerge as the best candidate. Why? Because you are not going to start from the bottom. You are going to show them that I can at least draft pleadings. I've got an idea of how to draft pleadings, not from an exam, but from a real situation kind of a matter. And what people also don't realize is networking is very important. While you are there doing your articles, you are able to network with the other lawyers in the industry and many other stakeholders who will help you in future. Listen, if a VEC work student comes here at my firm and works very hard and prove themselves, and few years down the line, they are done with their degree and they call me and they say, I'm looking for articles, I would be more than prepared to call my other friends who need students, because I can vouch for this person. I know that they can work. I know that they are very much capable. So I will be able to jump in and help those people without any doubt. You understand? So networking becomes very important. It's either you're absorbed by the people you are working with during your work, or they will connect you to some other people. Always, always important.
I was just talking to a student today, and then I was saying to them that I think one of the things that at least is not in the curriculum of universities, which I think is also a disservice because it's left to the students to actually gather on, is that university, I mean, we just come in and we lecture and we leave. So then the students focus more on the lecture material and then they graduate as this top students, but the softer skills, or the skills of their profession and stuff like that. And I think a lot of students need to know about these vacations and everything like that. So now when you do articles, right? You guys do articles. I've heard you say that. Um, then here's a student who's getting to do their articles. I'm sure there is an etiquette, for a lack of a better word, of how you actually, I don't know, prove yourself through the articles and stuff like that. Anything to share on that?
Oh, yes. Obviously, when you're doing your articles, it does not necessarily mean that you are going to be absorbed as an attorney at the end of the day. So, how do you then become absorbed? I think you need to prove yourself when you are serving your articles. It's very important. And ultimately, if you have impressed, when you are done with your articles and you have passed your board exams and you are an admitted attorney, and most importantly, there's a vacancy at your firm, they are most likely to absorb you as an attorney to work with them because they've seen what you are capable of doing. And sometimes we see people who come in, serve articles, do very well, and because they've been so effective, it becomes even more difficult to let them go. Even though you don't have a post, you end up even creating a post to ensure that you keep them, you know, because you realized how impactful they were to your practice. So I can say, um, if they work very hard and apply themselves very well and show that they can do this thing, they are likely to succeed in this career. I was telling somebody this morning that uh, in this profession, your hard work is directly linked to the health of your purse. The harder you work, the the more wealthier you are likely to become. It might not happen overnight, but hard work always pays. You are going to reap one day.
I like that use of word, that your hard work is linked to the health of your past.
Yes, it's directly linked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I see there is this is it the in banking there is this not in yeah in banking there is the I think they call them not in banking, yeah, in banking also you have the top 5 or top 4. In accounting I think they call them the big 4, which is the big 4 um leading accounting firms. Um, and I understand quite little that also in law, you actually have a similar setup like the big companies. I don't know if you guys call them the big 4 or the big 5. I don't know how many are they and stuff like that. And, you know, it seems like everyone, well, I'm just assuming here that getting into those bigger, working for those companies, but it seems like it's very stringent, competitive to get in there.
Mhm. Yes, you are quite correct. I think yeah, you can call them big five or rather top five or top 10, depending on how you want to classify them. So yeah, we do have those, and you are quite right. It's very, very difficult to crack in and get to be associated with those firms. As I explained earlier, it all boils down to hard work. If you work very, very hard and you apply yourself very, very well, it will be very difficult for those firms to ignore you. They are going to come and they will make sure that they ultimately retain you as one of their lawyers, because they know that with your work ethic, with um, your approach to matters, and your IQ, you are going to be of a great help to their practice. So once again, hard work always help. There are people who are not, for a lack of better word, as smart, but they still make it to those firms because of their hard work. Their work ethic is very, very good, and their approach to matters is also quite good. So it's, I know the general perception is you must be a distinction kind of a learner or a student, but that is not always the case. Hey? You can still average your 70 and still go up all the way up and work in those firms.
So, what do they look for? And maybe I'm asking a very wrong question to you, but you're an associate at Adams and Adams. I like how the law firms have the use of names, because I also saw that you are also um, in, what is the name of the company? I think, let me just get the name here. Um, is it Gilden Hayes Malachi
Or
Incorporated?
Heldenase. Okay,
Yeah, oh,
yes.
Gilden Hayes. I like the use of I think actual names of people and stuff like that. So since you're already in that kind of setup, what do you think they look?
Just narrow them down and try to make sense of them. Uh, so the firms have two ways of recruiting. They either recruit you when you have just finished your LLB and you have passed extremely well, and they feel like you are a very good fit for their practice. I'm talking of your medium-sized firm like your Helden Malachi and your big firms like Adams and Adams. That is what they would uh, look for, and then they would take you as their candidate attorney. And if you're impressed, you then become absorbed as an attorney, as I mentioned earlier. Then, uh, secondly, they then do head hunting. They go out and look for somebody that uh, they feel like they need in their practice to come and help them. So obviously, not everybody who passed well will make it to that recruitment program. Some of them end up working elsewhere, and only later get into those firms. Even those who didn't pass that well according to the criteria of the firms, but because of how they apply themselves in practice and how they ultimately prove to be very good, they then become very attractive to firms of this magnitude, and they end up working there. So yeah, those are some of the ways that firms usually go around uh, using to recruit.
Oh, I see. I see. I
Yes.
see. So building yourself, showing up and networking, like you said, goes a long way. Eh?
Very, 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 very long. So just to give a bit of a background on how um, my career specifically got to be where it is today. Uh, I worked at the Legal Aid South Africa, as I mentioned earlier,
Mm.
and I served articles there doing mostly litigation, criminal litigation, and civil litigation. And then I took a firm decision that I am not going to be continuing in those kind of practices because I felt like they're not speaking to my values. And I then switched and did property law. and I did that through the deeds office of Pretoria. So how deeds office work is all the lawyers who are doing property law matters get to ultimately submit all their documents to the deeds office for verification and compliance before the deeds office can register those title deeds and bond documents to say now you are a registered holder of the title and stuff like that. So I got to work in that space, and they recruited me as a, a lawyer to come and do that compliance aspect of property law. And that's how I got to be exposed to property law. And that's where I got to network a lot with many attorneys. And I think through my work ethic, they could uh, see that I can be a match in their practices. And that's how I got to work with Geldenis Malachi attorneys. They are also doing very well, and they came for me because I did very well when I was at the deeds office. I pushed very hard, and I believe I applied myself very well doing that kind of work. And even Adams and Adams, when they came knocking on my door, um, it was precisely because of what I was doing at the deeds office, because they were working directly with me. They knew what I'm able to do, and when they had a vacancy, they said, "But we know a guy," and
Mm.
they came for me. So this goes to show you that even though you don't make it from the onset, how you go about. I'm sure you are only now seeing my classes or see. Okay,
Yeah. Is it load shedding?
yeah. So, sorry. Yeah, it's
Is
it's
it
it's load shedding, and I suppose 6 o'clock they take this electricity. So
okay?
yeah, it goes a long way uh, in showing your peers in the profession that you are as much capable. And when opportunities arise, you will always be in their minds. And I think the same apply to judges and many other uh, professionals. They do the same. How you worked as an advocate ultimately prompts others to think of you when there are vacancies for one to be a judge and stuff like that. So hard work carries you through and through.
Ah,
Yeah.
well said, man. Well said. Um, do you guys have generators there? Are they gonna kick in or?
They are going to kick in it because this is now a very big building.
Oh,
They
okay,
are
no.
going to take some few minutes, but it's gonna come back.